Uh, okay, I think we're ready to go. Welcome. I think this is my first live stream. It's been a while. I'll probably do more live streams in future rather than recorded content. Just because that just fits my style. I'm not fancy. I haven't got all the editing that everybody else has. To be honest with you, I'm probably not going to learn, which is my own issue. But fuck it. What can you do? That's life. Okay, so today we have. I've done in the past some Vice articles, and I've done one about 100 ways to make life more tolerable for like fat people, and another one as well, but I can't remember exactly what it was now. It was something to do with 100 ways to or 50 ways to make life more bearable for LGBT people or something like that. I can't remember exactly what they were. They'll be in my video history somewhere. But yeah, I don't know. I came across this today. It's hot off the presses. Oh no, I say hot off the presses. It's 2018. Ooh. See, it was posted today by Vice UK, and it had the date of May 29th, 2020. But the actual article is April 19th, 2018. And yeah, I didn't actually fully realise that when I was about to start to make this video, because I literally just saw it and decided to jump on stream. But you know what? I think I'm going to go with it anyway. Because I read some of these, not all of them. I probably got to like number 20 or something. And I just kind of thought like, this kind of needs to be addressed, because you've got people like this Ksenia Boom, however you say that. She is speaking for. She's kind of trying to represent black people in not the most. In probably just not the best way, really. I think, and you'll see why I think this as we go on, but. Okay, so the first one is just because you can't see racism around you doesn't mean it's not happening. Trust people of colour's assessment of a situation. I can kind of agree to that one, okay? Just because you can't see racism doesn't mean it's happening. I agree with that sentiment, absolutely. However, and I don't know if this is just the media's problem or what, but there's definitely a mix-up sometimes. Like, people will say, just because something happens to a black person and the other person happened to be white, that is somehow racism. And I don't think that is always the case. Sometimes two individuals come together, have an incident, a shouting match, an altercation, whatever the hell it is. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about racism. Maybe just one of them's a cunt. Like, like maybe just one of them's just a dickhead and wants to say some stupid shit to somebody and get into an argument or whatever. Not everything is about racism all the time, That would be my answer to that. But, I think, you can kind of tell. Like, I think I can generally tell when somebody's being racist or not, usually. It doesn't happen a lot in my life, I'm not going to lie. I've come across a few racists in my time. I've been accused of being a racist, here and there. Mainly by people online who don't know me, but yeah, I can't always trust people's of colour's assessment. But it's not really their fault. I feel like a lot of the time people conflate, like the media especially, they conflate certain things to be racism that might not be racism, and I think that confuses a lot of people. And to me, that's just not fair, and that's something that the media should be held accountable for. Something that Vice has definitely done. And So, sorry, can't fully agree to it, but I do agree to the opening sentiment. Don't assume that all people of colour share the same views. We are not a monolith. Definitely agree to that one. Absolutely. Now we go on to 98 points of why black people are a monolith. And to treat us like such. Which it's just, that is, this one here literally sums up the hypocrisy of this entire article. And it sums up, you know, how the media treats black people, how politicians can often treat black people, you know, Democratic or Republican. I definitely believe that, and I know it to be true, this number 2. But that's just not how people act in the world, unfortunately. And also the same can be said back to you as well. You know, white people, any group really, are like that. So, yeah, it's kind of, seems like an obvious point that shouldn't really have to be said. But, you know, I guess people do need reminding, because we do have that tribal element to us that does make it hard to see through these things sometimes. Don't assume or guess people's races. This is not a fun game for us. I mean, yeah, I don't know how often that really happens. That seems a bit odd. I mean, what's going to happen? You see a black person, you're like, I don't know. I just, it's just such a weird thing. I've never assumed somebody's race, I suppose. But if I see a black person, I do think that they're a black person of some description. Like maybe they're African descent, maybe they're Caribbean descent or something, whatever. I don't know. But like, fucking, should I not do that? Like, should I assume that they might be white or Asian or something? I don't know. Like, what? I don't know exactly what the point of that is. And to be honest with you, I've never seen that before. Although I can probably guess that something like that might happen to people who are not white or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. That yeah, I mean, fair enough, I suppose. I mean, I don't do that. It seems a bit. It just seems like a bit of a weird point to me. I don't know. It's a bit confusing to me, but okay. On to the next one. If someone tells you they're from Uganda, don't say I went to Nigeria once. I mean, they are just trying to connect with you. I know it's probably a little bit off base, but they're just trying to find some common ground. I think that's a bit more innocent, and to be a bit of a dick about it is kind of just says something about you rather than them, really. But yeah, whatever. I mean, I know they're not the same country, obviously, and they do have different cultural practices and cultures. So I know what you're saying. It is a little bit of a dumb thing to say. But like I say, they're trying to make connections. They're trying to... When people bring up stuff like that, they're trying to find middle ground between each other. And to kind of shut that down, it seems like antithetical. I'm sure it's a bit annoying, but like it just doesn't seem to like mesh well with like, you know, the idea of trying to build bridges between different races and stuff. Related, don't refer to Africa as a country. It's a continent and it's widely varied. Yes, take a moment. Yeah, I agree with that one. Definitely agree with that one. Absolutely. Been doing a lot of studying about Africa as a continent, obviously, and all the different countries and different practices and whatnot. And yeah, there is a lot of variation, a lot of different tribes, a lot of the different things going on there. And yeah, anyone who does that is obviously just a bit dumb. And I would basically have the same reaction in that instance if somebody did that, because that's like somebody, you know, referring to Europe like it's a country or something. It's just retarded, isn't it? Rest assured that literally no person of colour ever wants you to get back from holiday, show off your tan, and excitedly exclaim, "Look, I'm almost as dark as you." Cease and desist. I understand this one's probably meant to be a little bit funny or something, but again, it's definitely a bit of a shit joke. Like, don't get me wrong, like, probably a bit of a shit joke, and it probably is a bit irritating to hear. But come on, man, like, this is just, it's nothing. You know what I mean? It's literally nothing. You know, this point could have been taken up by something with a bit more substance. Don't assume that a person of colour knows everything about their country of heritage. Do you know everything there is to know about America, Germany, Sweden, whatever? That's what I thought. Yeah, I kind of agree. It's one of them weird ones, though, isn't it? Where, you know, people want you to be like people like this. They want you to be mindful of so much shit. But then if you ask them something about what they might know about their own heritage or history, they don't have anything to say. Like, you know, they're kind of not they're kind of not living by what they preach, if that makes sense. You know, they want Americans to be so knowledgeable about race relations and the history of Black America and all that kind of stuff. But then if they're asked a simple question about like their country of heritage and if they know anything about it, that then they can get defensive and act like a cunt about it. It's fine to not know anything about it, obviously, and I don't expect people to literally know loads of stuff about it. But like, but yeah, again, it's like one of them things where people are just trying to build bridges. They're just asking you about your heritage. You know, if you turn around and go, "Oh, I'm from Nigerian heritage," or my grandparents are Nigerian or something, and they go, "Oh, do you ever go to Nigeria?" Or do you know much about Nigeria or anything like that? Or, you know, what's your connection to it? And then you turn around and you're just like, well, I don't really know anything about Nigeria. Why would you think I know anything about Nigeria? Blah, 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 blah. And honestly, you're just being a bit of a dickhead there, aren't you, really? If someone's grilling you, though, like, as if you should know all this stuff, like, why don't you know anything about Nigeria? Your grandparents are from Nigeria, blah, blah, blah. Then, yeah, they are also being a dick. So it's kind of I guess you kind of take it on a case-by-case basis. Don't assume we can run if we're black, do math if we're Asian, have drinking problems if we're indigenous, or Irish, I suppose. Yeah, I agree with that one. It's not good to assume these things. I do think it's funny to play on these stereotypes amongst friends, and, you know, we can have banter together and whatever. But it's kind of one of them where you kind of have to have trust with people to have that kind of banter. I don't think it's appropriate to be pulling out these stereotypes and be joking with people when you don't really know them and stuff. You know, I think most of us wouldn't like that. It's just kind of impolite, isn't it, really? But I also don't think it's inherently just, like, wrong. Again, it's one of the things where you have to have kind of, like, trust with people to do that kind of stuff. But just to go back, actually, if you really do think that, if you just think that, like, black people are just inherently better at athletics or whatever, like, or Asians are just better at maths, I know statistically speaking that might be true, but obviously on an individual level that's not necessarily going to be true. So yeah, if you really do believe that, then, like, yeah, you're kind of being an idiot. This is just, number 9 is just a rehash of number 2. Regard us as autonomous, unique individuals, not as representatives of our race. But at the same time, you're also being a representative of your race in this post. So it's a bit of a hypocritical statement, but yeah, whatever. Don't make embarrassing jokes to try and be down with people of colour. We'll laugh at you, not with you. Yeah, again, I guess it just depends. Like, you know, if you're going to make jokes, like, kind of racial jokes or anything like that, and by racial jokes I don't mean racist jokes, I just mean jokes that involve race in some way, like, there is, like, a difference there. And I think you just have to have a certain kind of knowledge. Like, you just have to know what you're doing. You're taking a massive gamble if you really don't know what the fuck you're talking about, and then you make jokes like that, because it probably will fall flat. But, you know, these people are probably just, again, they're trying to bridge a gap. You know, they're probably nervous, and they probably just want to fit in and whatever. And it is pretty cringe, pretty annoying, pretty embarrassing. And yeah, it's advisable not to do that, but you know, maybe just roast them a little bit. You know, there's no need to shut people down or make them feel like they're just wrong or bad people for doing it, because if you can tell that their intention is to try and be innocent and not be a dick, then you should try and at least roll with that, I think, because, you know, that's just, again, it's just how we build bridges. You know, it's how we communicate together. Don't rinse our culturally specific memes. They're ours. Go and enjoy that weird one about the plums. I mean, honestly, I actually don't know what the fuck they're talking about there, but honestly, I don't know what they mean by culturally specific. Like, is black culture separate to American culture? Like, because I've always considered them to be kind of the same, really. Like, American culture is like... maybe I'm wrong on this, but to me, American culture is like a vibrant tapestry of like different things and like kind of a melting pot, and that's kind of the point of American culture, is to have that. So they may be kind of culturally specific in a certain way, like because they kind of point to a specific part of American culture, but in the end, all people should be able to relate or find humor in different cultural things. That's meant to be like the point of America. Like to not engage with it would be to kind of have this weird social segregation where you can only have jokes that involve your race or your culture and not ours or something. It's like, that's, again, it's just antithetical to bringing people together. It seems like kind of a bit of a dick attitude. You know, I would consider that attitude to be like a kind of white... You know, I would see similar attitudes on, like, the white racist side of things, you know what I mean? If you're at my house party, don't turn off The Weeknd to put on Arctic Monkeys. Now, this one I definitely agree with 100%. Absolutely. If you're turning off The Weeknd to put on Arctic Monkeys, there's definitely something wrong. Yeah, can't agree enough with that one. Avoid phrases like, but I have a black friend, I can't be racist. You know that's bullshit as well as we do. Honestly, on some level I understand this to be true. However, I think it's way more likely that you're not a racist if you do have black friends than if you don't have black friends. And yeah, it's about as simple as that. Like, I think, yeah... Yeah, I don't even know if there's anything more to say on that one. I just kind of think, yeah, definitely less likely to be racist if you do have black friends. When you endlessly complain about how terrible white people are, you are being that terrible white person. Jeez. Right back at you with that one. If you endlessly complain about how terrible white people are as a black person, then you are kind of being that terrible black person that is really annoying. Don't say shit like, I know what it's like to be a person of colour, I'm a ginger. I'm on the fence with this one because growing up, like, I've got ginger friends, and I've seen them take a lot of shit, like a lot. Like, probably a lot more than, like, any black kids or Asian kids that I saw in school. And it was probably because it was kind of consequence-free. Like, a lot of people know, even as kids, that if they pick on a black person, that they might be considered, like, a bad person. But if they pick on a ginger, that basically no one's going to really do anything about it. So I wouldn't say that, like, obviously gingers don't have the same experience maybe legally, like when it comes to like government or historical kinds of oppression or whatever, but just in like general, like just in like growing up and like how people treat each other and whatever, I mean, maybe gingers do have a little bit more insight into what that might feel like. So again, I don't know if it's so... Again, you know, they're just trying to build a bridge, and they're just trying to bond over the fact that, yeah, maybe we got picked on for something that we can't help, you know? Again, very uncharitable. Some of these things are very uncharitable towards white people. Like as if everything has this kind of negative underlying motive to it, which I just think is kind of bullshit, really. Don't question someone's blackness if they're light-skinned. It's not your place. Other black people can make sure that light-skinned black people are cognizant of their privilege. I honestly find this one to be incredibly bigoted. Number one, I don't know why anyone would be questioning someone's blackness if they're light-skinned. Like, I've never done that. I've never seen that. Maybe it happens, I suppose. I mean, I guess it does. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but it just seems like this is a very weird one that I'm not even sure exists. And to be honest with you, what I have seen on the internet is black people doing this to other black people who are light-skinned. And I've always just found it really disgusting. Like, this is just kind of bullshit. The vast majority of, like, colorism, if you want to call it that, with, like, between, like, light-skinned and dark-skinned black people, is propagated by other black people. Black people should celebrate each other, and other people of other races as well, just as much as anyone else. Like, the colorism thing seems very specific to black people, and is not something that, like, white people engage in that much, I don't think. Maybe they do, you know, maybe I'm just not privy to some of this stuff, but it doesn't seem that way to me from what I've seen out there. Yeah, never try and tell a person of colour what is or isn't racist. Again, it kind of goes back to one of the points I made earlier, but I think constituting what is or isn't racist has to be done by all people of all races, and it has to be kind of like a universal thing. You can't have it 1 minute saying that, like, black people can't be racist because of XYZ, or that all white people are racists or whatever, and then also come along and say never try and tell a person of colour what is or isn't racist. Like, it just makes the whole conversation, like, so disjointed and all over the place and have different philosophical elements. None of it can really be universal. It just constantly moves the goalposts of what is and what isn't going on. And I think when we can decide what is or isn't racist between us all is when we can actually fight racism. If people are constantly fucking around with what it means to be racist and trying to pretend they aren't racist when they know they fully well can be, I just think it makes it all disingenuous, and it just does more to exacerbate the problem rather than doing anything to actually make it better. When you find instances of racist bullshit online, please don't send it to us. We know racism exists, thanks. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I can assume that one's probably a bit annoying. I mean, if friends just kind of get hold of you to show you racist shit, it's kind of like, okay, is this all you ever want to talk to me about, is race stuff? Yeah, that must be kind of annoying. Read something already written about it rather than... Oh, this follows on. Okay. Read something already written about it rather than coming to your friends' acquaintances of colour, looking for hot takes on anything and everything appropriative. A Kardashian Miley Cyrus does. We don't want to think about this shit 24/7. Yeah, I can kind of agree. I mean, I honestly don't agree with cultural appropriation, mainly because I think cultures should meld together and celebrate each other and take part in what they do and whatever. And if that takes, if that takes the form of people engaging in different, dance styles, hairdos, fashions, musics, whatever, to me that's a coming together of culture that should be celebrated rather than torn down. So that's why I don't really agree with cultural appropriation, because I think it's kind of bullshit. But I can also agree that, again, people sending you this shit and bringing it up all the time to you must get quite annoying. Understand that some days are even more mentally exhausting for people of colour, thanks to the new... Wait, sorry, I'm going to have to read this one again. Understand that some days are even more mentally exhausting for people of colour, thanks to the news cycle. Try not to badger us for our opinions on the latest atrocity that has occurred. Leave us to grieve. Now, these last two ones about cultural appropriation and this one, they kind of assume that black people are a monolith and that everyone, grieves over a black guy getting shot or whatever. I've never understood this take. I don't grieve every time a white person's killed or whatever. I have no connection to them other than my skin colour. why would I? Like, it just seems it's sad. Don't get me wrong. It is a tragedy. I think it's a tragedy when anybody dies, especially in unjust circumstances and things like that. You know, like murders and whatnot. I think that's really bad and wrong. But like, at the same time, I don't have this strange connection to it. If I did, then I would probably be a Nazi because, you know, yeah, I feel like that way of thinking facilitates that kind of white nationalist identitarianism, is that like I've got to feel connected to these people because of my skin colour for some reason. It just seems kind of retarded and, again, builds more divisions. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that people can't grieve or not have feelings or opinions about what happens or goes on. But it's kind of this idea that, like, you should or have to grieve or whatever for a black person having something happen to them. Like, whether it's just or unjust or whatever. Like, I just don't get it. Like, I don't really get it, to be honest. And then this one, but when we do have something to say about it, listen. Like, it's like my way or the highway all the time with this bullshit. With this kind of attitude, it's just my way or the highway constantly. There's no compromise. It's just, yeah, if we say it's racist, if we have an opinion, then you listen. We don't want to hear your opinions about it. But when we have opinion, you fucking listen. It's really just condescending and very entitled. It's very bratty, a lot of this shit, actually. Share articles relating to the everyday experiences of racism written by people of colour. So that's something that they're saying we should do. Yeah, I guess so. But you also said that you didn't want people talking to you about it all the time. But, okay, whatever. Don't be that person who is weird and sycophantic and loves to demonstrate their wokeness constantly to the people of colour around them. Be thoughtful. Okay, but then you also want to share articles relating to everyday experiences of race and racism written by people of colour. Like, what do you want? Like, what is it that you actually want? Do you want, like, white people to care about all this stuff and be knowledgeable about it and talk about it? But you just don't want... You don't want them to talk to you about it. Like... What? But to be honest with you, like, I do actually know what she means by this, like, because it is kind of fake. Like, it is just, like, running around, like, acting like you care about black people so much, when in reality, like, what have you ever done? Like, nothing. So, yeah, it is... I get it. Like, I get it to a certain extent, but the whole tone of this is just, like, all over the place. It's just, like, the way it... The way her attitude is coming off right now is just like kind of a dickhead, to be honest. Read books by people of colour. I recommend Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, and literally everything that Junot Diaz writes for great insights into blackness. I don't know, but do you get to define what is blackness or not? Or like, do any of these people? Since people aren't a monolith and all that stuff, and everybody's an individual, and, you know, like, if that's the case, then what is blackness? Because blackness is essentially a bunch of individuals, you know, and it means different things to different people, so it just feels like this point is completely moot, and it's just what you feel blackness is, and this is what you want people to know, but isn't really what all black people think or feel. So, yeah, kind of stupid. What shows that are created by people of colour, i.e. Atlanta or Insecure? Yeah, okay, fair enough. I'm really not against that. I consume a lot of black TV shows and music and whatnot, so yeah, whatever. I've definitely not got a problem with that. Have a critical eye when watching TV and movies. How are they portraying people of colour and why? What purpose does it serve? I think we can say that about anything, can't we? if we want. And I definitely think there are ways in which people do these things disingenuously or for like sly motives. But again, I think it can happen to any culture. I know we're talking specifically about black people now, so yeah, I guess I can kind of agree with that. There's definitely been things in the past that have essentially just made out black people are just kind of bad for whatever reason. But then you get things like The Wire that can portray black people in a bad light if you want to look at it in a certain way. But the purpose that it serves is it's actually showing real life narratives of like what people do and go through. And yes, some of these black people can be bad, some of these black people can be good, black people can be victims of circumstances and all the rest. You know, it shows the nuance of things. I think that's what it is you have to kind of see, does it have nuance? Does it have a strange agenda behind it or whatever? And I would say that goes for any group. I think you should always be looking out for that kind of thing because, you know, propaganda does exist, and so you should kind of be wary of it. If you go to an art gallery, notice how many works are by people of colour. If it's lacking, make some noise. Send an email, query the curator. White people shouldn't have a monopoly on what can be considered art. I think the problem with this one, it depends what the art gallery is. I suppose if it's like modern art, like, you know, and it's just like an art show or whatever, like, yeah, I suppose you can say that. I mean, it depends though, because they have to put out, you know, calls for artists to put the artwork in, and if people of colour are not putting in artworks for them to do an exhibition, then what are they supposed to do? But yeah, I don't think anyone has a monopoly on what can be considered art. So yeah, I agree with that last bit. But I don't think you can always put it down, like kicking up a fuss just because there isn't enough black people in this exhibition. It just kind of seems a bit silly. Like, you know, you don't know the circumstances of why that might be. To kick up a fuss about it like you're just being a bratty kid, just like, there's not enough black people here, me. Like, it's just kind of a bit fucking stupid, isn't it? It just makes you look like a dickhead, to be honest. Especially when you do get like shitloads of specifically black art exhibitions and specifically black events for whatever that celebrate black art and culture. Like, that happens quite a lot, and like, yeah, I just don't really see the problem here. I think this is very much a very first world problem that is just, who gives a fuck? I mean, most of this is first world problems that, you know, we could kind of say who gives a fuck, but some of them are kind of legitimate. Some of them I've been on board with and are kind of legitimate, but there's definitely a lot of questionable stuff here. And I think it's more to do with her attitude than anything, but it is kind of informed by her politics. I think partly her attitude is what it is because she buys into this kind of quote-unquote woke culture shit, you know. If a character you assumed was white in a book is portrayed by an actor of colour in the movie, embrace it. Whiteness is not the default. If they're not explicitly said to be white, then yeah, I don't think it really matters that much. I don't actually have a problem with that. The only time I have a problem is when the character is specifically white. Because I think for anyone of any culture, like any story or like piece of media or cult, because I mean these things are kind of culture in a way, and if for instance the Black Panther was suddenly Japanese, that would be weird, and I wouldn't like that. Like, I wouldn't want that to happen, and I'm sure most black people wouldn't want it to happen. You know, I think it's kind of... It's just kind of silly and it's arbitrary to change white or any other characters into some other thing. I also think it's kind of stupid when they do it with white ones as well, though. I'm universal on this. Like, if there's a character that's like specifically Chinese, but then they change that person to a white character, although I kind of get it because it's Western Hollywood, and there's more white people here, so they're trying to cater to the white audience. Just like that character might be Japanese if it was a Japanese movie, even if originally all the characters were white or something. I can kind of give a little bit of leeway to it, but I still think it's kind of stupid. It's still in the same ballpark, and it's kind of stupid. I mean, it's not like there isn't Asian actors out there. If a story has a Chinese character and they're specifically Chinese and there is some kind of reason for it, then they should be portrayed as Chinese. Like, to change them into a white character seems a little either lazy or just pandering, and there's no real need to do it. Support plays written by and acted in by people of colour. The world of theatre is overwhelmingly white. I guess I don't really have a problem with that. There's no problem supporting people. It's kind of whatever. Don't really mind about that one. Got no real thoughts on it. Other than, yeah, do that. I mean, if they're good, even better. I wouldn't say just support... Like, don't support anything that's just shit. Like, just for the sake of them being black. Like, just, like, don't support any pieces of theatre that are written by white people if they're shit. If they're shit, they're shit. Like, who gives a fuck? Like, they're shit. Refuse to go to club nights or drag shows or burlesque nights that use culturally appropriative acts. Nah, I think that's shit. I think that's stupid. You go to those club nights. You'll probably have a lot of fun. And I know that drag artists of all colours do those kinds of things. And a lot of them purposefully ham up, and you could even call it like caricature or stereotype themselves to poke fun at how the stereotypes are absurd and silly and over the top. And, you know, maybe just stop being so uptight. Maybe that's the one that needs to come into it here. Stop being so uptight about everything. You know, that could maybe do a little bit of good. Maybe it's good to laugh at yourself sometimes. You know, I like roasts of white culture. I love watching black comedians that roast white culture. It's hilarious. It's fine to laugh at yourself and laugh at, not at other cultures, but kind of with the stereotypes and being silly together. You know, it does more good than harm, in my opinion. And I think people forget that. They want to look at the surface level and go, oh, that's a caricature of this and that's bad, without thinking about how this can actually bring people together or enrich relations between each other. You know, I know it seems shitty on the surface, but it is a way. It is one of the ways in which people can actually come together. If you have kids, buy them dolls of colour and books with characters of colour. Yeah, I guess, I'm not really bothered by that. It's kind of whatever. It'd be a bit weird if you had a white daughter and just bought them all Barbies of colour. Also, you know, just all black Barbies. It would be kind of weird. But, yeah, whatever, have a fucking black Barbie doll. Like, who gives a shit? Like, I'm pretty sure my sisters had a black Barbie doll and they played with it all the time. But, yeah. Just fucking dolls and shit. Like, I had I had a bunch of like wrestlers that were black and stuff that I used to play with. I guess you could consider them my Barbie dolls growing up. Yeah, I had a Booker T that I fucking loved. I love that Booker T so much that his arm fell off, right? It came off, like the inside of the thing that kept the arm in like came out. And I literally like stuck it back in and still played with it for years after. That's how much I fucking loved that toy. Yeah. Where was I? Sorry. Support crowdfunding campaigns for cultural products created by... See, actually, wait a minute. Sorry. I know I just completely cut myself off there, but to go back to this one, if you have kids, buy them dolls of colour and, you know... It's kind of like, what's going on here? Because you want to expose the kids to different cultures and different skin colours and stuff, but you can't, as an adult, participate in these kinds of quote-unquote culturally appropriative club nights or drag shows or whatever. again, it's just like mixed messages. Like, what do you want? Like, do you want people to be segregated, or do you want people to embrace each other's cultures? Like, which is it? Because humour is one of the ways to do that, and that's what these people are doing, is they probably using humour to bring people together. Like, what is it you want? Like, everything that comes, like, one point to another, it feels like we're contradicting ourselves here. Support crowdfunding campaigns for cultural products created by people of colour if you can. Yeah. Again, if they're good, there's no point doing it just because they're black. I mean, that's kind of like, if you're going to say that, then you're basically saying that the same can be said for white Nazi people or whatever. Like, white people are allowed to support things just because they're white. Like, you're giving credence to that kind of thought, and I think that's kind of dangerous. And I don't mean it about that point in specifically, but like, there's multiple points that have that same kind of idea behind it, and I just think that idea is basically, you're saying how the white supremacists think is legitimate, basically, and I don't think that's right. Donate money to grassroots movements around you that are run by and support people of colour. Kind of the same thing, isn't it, really? Again, it depends what those movements are, because if they are for black supremacy, then no, I'm not gonna support that. But if it's for stopping gang violence in the community and trying to bring people together and having like a fun time and having barbecues and supporting each other, definitely down for that. But if it's just some grassroots black movement that's black supremacist and hates Jews or something, no, I'm not down with that. Support small businesses owned by people of colour. Oh yeah, absolutely. No problem with that. Just support small business in general. But definitely of people of colour, because honestly, it's one of the things that actually is a real way of helping black communities thrive. It's like one of the real ways that barely gets spoken about. Malcolm X used to speak about this all the time, and it seems like it's a point that's often forgotten about. And before the coronavirus and all the big problems with unemployment now since the lockdown, before then, black businesses were booming for the first time in a very long time. And I think that it was kind of to do with Obama. I think Obama's policies definitely paved the way to facilitate that to happen. But Trump also blew it up. Like, Trump blew it up to make it even bigger and better. So I think both men should be credited with that, to be honest with you. There's a lot of Trump supporters out there who'll say, no, it's just Trump. And there's a lot of people out there who'll say it was just Obama. I think it was both men actually facilitated that phenomenon. And both should get credit for it, really. But unfortunately, it kind of looks like maybe COVID and the lockdown and all that stuff has kind of upended that trend, which is honestly a massive shame. If you're upper or middle class, try to avoid moving into an area that has historically been populated by low-income people of colour. Gentrification tears communities apart. Again, this is kind of a do you want integration or not kind of argument, because I kind of actually agree with gentrification, but like in the sense of like, yeah, gentrification can be bad. Like, I think the communities themselves should lift them up rather than like outside sources coming in and buying it up and whatever. But it's really weird. I don't know how to say it exactly, but it's just if it's not happening, then well, it's not that it's not happening. At the same time, I think people should be kind of free to move and pick where they want to live. So inherently in this one, you're basically saying that it's not okay to move somewhere. I mean, they're trying to say it's middle class, but what if you're a middle class black guy? Like, what? I don't know. This point just seems a little odd and not very well thought out. I understand some of the problems with gentrification, but I don't really know how you deal with it. I suppose there's nothing wrong in saying, like, if you want to be that woke white person, then yeah, maybe don't contribute to gentrification, or instead go down and spend your money in the local black businesses or whatever. Like, yeah, but at the same time, I don't know. Like, if you want to go live somewhere, like, go live there. Like, who is this person to tell you what to do? Yeah, it seems very entitled to kind of tell people what they can and can't do, but to be honest with you, that's not the same thing, though, is it? Now that I think about it, that's not actually the same thing, because gentrification is more like redevelopment, because it's actually a lot of... It'll be like Jewish people or Russian people or Chinese development or big American development companies will come in and they'll buy up a bunch of shops and development empty lots and stuff and redevelop the area, and then that will up the house prices or the rent prices, and that kind of like forces people out and stuff like that. And it's more to do with like big company, like building contractors and stuff like that, and like companies and stuff like that doing things like that, rather than just like middle class people moving into an area. If I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm mistaken on how gentrification works, but that is how it looks to me, and that's how I've understood it for a while. So, not sure if it's really that's the problem there. Also, just to be a bit of a devil's advocate here, but like on the flip side of that, you know, you're kind of saying that the opposite should be true. Like, oh, people from working class backgrounds don't move into middle class areas because you'll ghettoize it or something. You know, that's kind of... It's kind of a shitty take, really, in a certain respect. Like, people should move up and down the ladder and the social ladder, and I don't have a problem with black people moving into different areas. If they do ghettoize it by some happenstance, then that is bad in my opinion, and that shouldn't be happening. But if that doesn't happen, then there's not a problem. Like, there's just not a problem. Like, if anyone it doesn't matter who the group is. If it's a bunch of fucking rednecks that move into a middle class area and fuck it up and, you know, start acting crazy, yeah, they should be fucking kicked out and looked at badly as well. Like, it doesn't really matter who it is. It's like, if you move into an area and you start fucking it up, then, yeah, you're a problem. 36. Don't assume people of colour can't speak English. I've honestly never thought that until I heard someone speak. Like, I've honestly never ever thought that unless I heard someone speak. And even if I have heard them speak and they respond to me in English but with an accent from like a different country or something, I still assume they can speak English because they just responded to me in English. Like, I don't think I've ever assumed that. If anything, it's usually a surprise when I realise they can't speak English, and I'm like, ah, shit, this is going to be difficult. But yeah, seems like a specific one. If white people really do that, then that's kind of stupid, but okay, whatever. Also, be patient if our English isn't perfect. Yeah, absolutely. I'm always patient with people that have improper English, not improper, you know what I mean, like broken English. In fact, some of the funniest and best conversations I've had have been with people with broken English, funnily enough. But yeah, I'm definitely incredibly patient with people like that. No, never had a problem with that. And I agree, you know, if people are impatient with that, then they are showing themselves to be entitled, bratty people. Like, it's kind of retarded. But again, this comes back to this thing where they want patience for, you know, broken English, and to be thoughtful towards them, but there's no thought or benefit of the doubt given to the white people in these points. in general, just don't assume we want to be white or want to assimilate, and don't pressure us to do so. Well, okay, don't pressure us to be thoughtful towards black people then, or to care about black people's culture, or any of these points that you've just said. It kind of goes both ways. Respect kind of goes both ways. If you want to identify more with your African heritage or your Caribbean heritage or whatever it is, your Asian heritage, you're more than free to do so. That is America, and even Europe. But if you don't want to assimilate, don't be surprised if people don't, or at least engage with the culture on some level and respect it, or know about it. Then don't be surprised if people return that ignorance back to you. Again, it's just, what do they fucking want here? Like, what are they what do they really want? Recognise that you can't assume someone's religion based on how they look. Not all South Asians and Middle Eastern people are Muslims. Not all black people are Christian. Not all East Asian people are Buddhist. You get the idea. Now, bit of a funny one, because generally speaking, it's probably true. Like, it's one of them ones where the statistics are so high that it's very likely. But again, yeah, I don't really tend to assume this unless it's told to me. I tend to just not really think about it that much when I'm talking to people of any race, unless religion comes up and then we start talking about it and then they happen to say what religion they are. But if they are dressed in like religious garb of any kind, or they've got a cross on or whatever, or they start mentioning things about God randomly, or Jesus Christ, yeah, I'm going to probably assume a little bit. I'm probably going to assume, and I'm probably going to be right. So, yeah. Remember that not all people of colour are straight. I mean, to be honest with you, tell that to other black people, because they seem to have a very, very... This is directed at white people, but it seems like black people have the bigger problem with black people being gay, not white people. So, yeah. And to be honest with you, I really don't care. I love gay people, and I love gay black people. So, yeah, I'm very aware. Very aware. I don't know. It seems like a fucking stupid point. I don't know. Like, what scenarios are people coming along, like, seeing this gay black... Because gay black guys act gay. Just like all gay guys act... Well, I say all. You know what I mean. There's some more than others, but, like, you see this guy acting gay who's black, and what, are you going to assume he's straight? Like, what? I don't get it. Like, I wouldn't... Yeah, whatever. Remember that people of colour are not inherently more homophobic than white people. They're not inherently more homophobic than anybody else, because nobody is inherently more homophobic, but statistically speaking, black people are more homophobic. And that's not inherent to their skin colour. There's just obviously something going on in the culture of black America that is making that happen. Right? So you're basically trying to kind of be in denial about that a little bit. But I will say that inherently, they're right inherently, by saying inherently, because I don't believe that. I don't think inherently black people are more homophobic than white people. But unfortunately, statistically speaking, and it is well known and documented that they are. So, yeah, like, maybe you should be having this conversation with black people. People can be black and gay and disabled and trans and middle class. Blackness is expansive. It doesn't look one way. Keep this in mind. I feel like you need to keep this in mind, because it seems like half the time you seem to forget this when you're talking to white people. But then you also want white people to remember it. It's like, you can't have it one way or the other. Like, either you recognise that, or nobody does. Like, what do you want here? I feel like I'm arguing with somebody that's like gaslighting me. You know, I mean, as I keep going down, like I feel like my mind is going foggy and fuzzy as I read this, because it's just like between each point, it just seems to like jump and flip. Like I made this point, or before this article ever did, I made this point that black people are not a monolith. In fact, it was number 2 really, but like, yeah, black people should be recognised that way, and articles like this don't actually help, because you're kind of coming at it like you are speaking for all black people. So you pepper points like this in, but then you'll have 5 other points that are coming from the perspective like you're speaking for all black people. It's really stupid. When we talk about race, we're not just talking about men. Repeat after me: intersections of race and gender exist. Yeah, I suppose. I don't really have a lot to say about that one. Remember that it is black women and native women and mixed race women who are most likely to be raped in their lifetimes. In America, you cannot be an advocate against sexual violence without considering the impact of race. So, is she kind of admitting that there's a problem with rape in these communities, propagated by those communities? Again, maybe a conversation to be had within the black space, rather than directed at white people. But it is something to be aware of. You know, I do think I think it is a problem, and it should not be happening. How to actually make that a thing is hard to say. There's a lot of debate about it. Don't ask black women if it's our real hair, and don't judge black women for wearing wigs or weaves or having relaxers. Again, have this discussion with black people, because that, again, whenever I see shit like that on YouTube videos or posts and stuff like that, it doesn't seem to really be coming from white people, this one. So yeah. But also, I don't know. I don't think there's any shame in it anyway. Like I don't really I don't judge anyone for it. But I don't think it's something you couldn't ask, especially if you're asking because you want to get similar hair weaves or you want to get a similar wig or something. I guess it just depends on why people are doing it. If they are doing it to be malicious and to judge you for having a weave or for having extensions or whatever, or a wig, then yeah, they're kind of being a dickhead, aren't they, really? I think that's just people being dicks, isn't it, really? Don't touch your fucking hair. Straight back at you. If you have a black girlfriend, please make sure that your shower is always adequately stocked with conditioner. Never that 2-in-1 stuff, we beg you. Bring your own. Never try and pull any uninvited race play shit in the bedroom. Seriously, what the fuck? Right back at you. Actively try to identify and unsubscribe from Orientalist tropes, i.e. believing that East Asian women are naturally more submissive or docile. People of colour are people, not characters. It's a weird one, because on the one hand I kind of agree with that. On the other hand, there is well-known, like very, very well-known cultures that exist where women do, in Asia, especially more in Japan, I suppose, but yeah, are more kind of submissive or shy or less assertive in the world, and yeah, that's just kind of how they are. I'm not saying that they all are, but it's not like it doesn't exist. So it's a weird one. It's like, I don't understand why you can't acknowledge it, but also I feel like you can do both things. You can acknowledge that that exists, but not always assume it of people. Again, it's one of the things that I would just know. Like if I met an East Asian woman, like a Japanese woman, and I started speaking to her, and as I was speaking to her, she was coming off really shy, really docile, didn't really have any opinions of her own, and like, you know, quite softly spoken and whatever, then yeah, I might think that she's one of those East Asian women. But if she turns around and she's a bit boisterous and likes to drink and firing off edgy jokes and stuff, I'd be like, oh, okay, she's like, she's her own person. She's a bit different. She's not like the culture that you hear about. So yeah, I just kind of take people as they are. But I can still acknowledge that these cultures exist as well at the same time, and it's not necessarily wrong that they exist either. I mean, it's not my bag. I prefer women that are more boisterous and edgy and stuff like that. Like, definitely, I'm more in that camp. But you know, I let people have their own thing going on. If you call a woman of colour exotic, you deserve to stub your toe every day for a year. Do not do this. I mean, honestly, I've never called a woman of any race exotic before. I understand that people say this kind of thing, but I'm pretty sure people say this about white people in like Africa and Asia and stuff like that. I think it's like a playful way of just kind of saying someone's sexy and foreign. You know, like sexy and not like me. Like, oh, they're a bit darker than me, but they're sexy. You know, it's kind of like a playful way of saying that. Yeah, it's probably a bit annoying, but kind of seems like a nothing burger. Like who really cares? Also, saying I've never fucked a black, Asian, native person to someone you're trying to hook up with is a one-way ticket to hell. Definitely insensitive. Like, if I was dating a black girl and they said I've never fucked a white person before, I don't know how I'd take it. It's a bit of a weird one. I don't know how I would respond to that. Because if we got on and we were joking and everything was actually amazing up until that point, I probably wouldn't care. If anything, I'd probably be like, oh my god, I can't believe you haven't done that before. Yeah, I probably just wouldn't care. I think if it was a bit weird of a conversation as it was already, and it was maybe a bit forced, or maybe they seemed a bit overly interested in me being white rather than just being a person, then yeah, I'd probably take it badly. It depends what signals I was picking up off somebody on that one. But yeah, definitely, if you're getting those signals that they're basically fetishizing you for your skin colour, then yeah, probably not great. If you have such fetishistic thoughts, just don't even bother coming near a person of colour. Is it wrong to find certain races attractive, though? Is that a fetish, or what? Like, because I find people of different ethnicities attractive. And I definitely have a thing for black girls, more so than most other girls. I have a thing for a lot of girls. Doesn't really matter the race. Definitely have a thing for black girls, though, but it's not really just because they're black. It's partly to do with it, obviously, because there is different features to different races and stuff. And I find black features to be slightly more attractive to me than certain others. But I don't just fancy, like, I don't know, I guess I don't treat it like a fetish, though. Like, it's not just black people that I fancy. And yeah, I don't know, it does matter about their personality as well. Like, I still care about personality quite a lot. And like, a lot of the reason why I'm attracted to black girls is because I'm really into black culture anyway in general. And I do find it difficult sometimes to joke, and I kind of find it difficult to joke even with black people sometimes, but I find it difficult to joke and connect with white women a lot about stuff because they're usually into like Mumford and Sons and like fucking, you know, Ed Sheeran and, you know, just, I don't know, fucking random shitty white artists and stuff. And, you know, there's some white artists that I'm into, but like, it's just not really my thing. And yeah, I don't know, I find it very difficult to connect with them, like when it comes to stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know, bit of a weird one. Anyway, enough of my sexual preferences. Remember that having mixed race children is not a cure for racism or a way to live out weird racial fantasies. I mean, yeah, but it's definitely better than like not. You know, I don't know. Like, well, I'm not saying it's a cure for racism, but surely mixed race couples and mixed race families are way more of a step in the right direction than not. Like, what the fuck. You know what I mean? It's just like everyone's just trying to get people to like leave it up to them. They're the couple. They're the parents. Let them feel how they want to feel about what they're doing. Don't fucking come along and tell them. Don't tell them what's racist and what's not racist. Don't come and tell them what is and what isn't a thing. Like, go fuck yourself. Like, some of these points honestly do get quite annoying. Like, I'm reading that, I'm just like, no, go fuck yourself. Like, maybe, yeah, the weird racial fantasy bit might be a thing. But the whole thing about, oh, it's not a cure for racism, like, don't get so high and mighty just because you're in a mixed race relationship. Like, no, shut up. Like, yeah, it's a bit weird if you were being high and mighty about it, but don't speak down to mixed race couples. Like, fuck off. If you're trying to start a mixed race family, sit down and deeply interrogate your intentions. Like, not everything has... What if you're just in love with somebody? Like, why has everything got to have this malicious intent underneath it? Like, the worst possible motives. Like, go fuck yourself. Like, honestly. It's this kind of thing where it's like, they're putting... The idea behind this is that all white people are, like, kind of secretly racist or secretly fetishizing black people or have these nefarious motives all the time. That's the same thought process of when white nationalists are just like, oh, well, all black people are criminals or inherently more predisposed to crime. It's the exact same way of thinking, and it's just so fucking stupid. If you do have mixed race children, make sure they have access to people who look like them and who understand their experiences. How about just giving them any child, mixed race, white, black, Asian, whatever, give any child a broad spectrum of views and opinions of people from different races and political spectrums, sexualities, genders. How about give them a broad range of access to information in life so that they can not only understand themselves and other people and the world that they live in. Not everything is just about race. Not everything is just about race. The world's bigger than that. The world's bigger than your complexes on race. Okay? And also, when people are being dicks to you for your race, the only thing you really need to understand about that, fundamentally, is that these people are dickheads. And I guess it doesn't really... I don't know, does it have to go much deeper than that? If you have a partner of colour or children of colour, trust and believe that you can still be racist. You're not exempt. If anything, you have even more of a duty to examine your behaviour for the benefit of your loved ones. Honestly, just fuck you. Like, honestly, with shit like this, just fuck you. I don't even really want to say anything else to it. It's just... Like, what is it that you think of white people, really? Because honestly, it seems very dehumanizing. It's like they're trying to take away this idea that you can legitimately be in love with a black person or legitimately love your black child. Like, what? Fuck off. Take your racist family members to task over shit they say at the dinner table or social media. Depends what it is that they're saying, but if they are being racist, yeah, I've definitely done that before in the past. I have to challenge certain family members, but I don't do it in a way where I shut them down. I really do try and have a discussion with them about it, because... And I try to do that with everybody. I'm not perfect. I definitely do sometimes lose my rag, and I'd say shit I shouldn't say, or, act in a way that I shouldn't, but... Yeah, but a lot of the times, I don't think they're really always truly being racist as well. Sometimes they're just kind of being ignorant or whatever, but... Yeah. But the same goes for really anything. When anyone's just kind of being misinformed and ignorant, you should probably try and point that out and try to do it in the best way possible, so that they can actually, understand where you're coming from. But that goes for people on the left as well. People on the left, they boil things down to the most minute things all the time, or the most 2D, the most low resolution way of looking at things, and it's just really not helpful. And I end up speaking out about that kind of thing a lot, and it honestly doesn't win me a lot of friends. Even when I'm trying to be the most charitable I can possibly be to somebody, people still get aggro and act like they know everything, and it's very disheartening, honestly. But yeah, I don't completely disagree with this one. Yeah, yeah, you should challenge people when they're just being misinformed and ignorant in general, whether it's about race or anything. Confront your colleagues who say racist shit unchecked at work. Yeah, if it's malicious, absolutely. If it's maliciously racist and actually, like, if I ever got the vibe off somebody that they were being like, "Oh, that fucking packy," or something like that at work, and especially if I liked the guy, like if I was at work with the guy, and I like the Asian guy, and then somebody's coming along and be like, "Oh yeah, that fucking packy over there," blah, 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 then yeah, I'd probably report them or something. Yeah. I'd definitely say something about it. Like, because, yeah, I think it is wrong. Even regardless of whether I like them or not, to be honest, actually. I don't even know why I said that. Regardless of whether I like them or not, I'd probably do the same thing. Look around your workplace. Are the only people of colour cleaners or assistants? What can you do to change that? I mean, that's never happened to me, so don't know. Maybe that's kind of more of an American specific thing. Most of the cleaners that I've ever seen in this country are white. So, yeah. If someone asks you to fill a role that you think a person of colour would be better suited for, recommend a talented person of colour who you know and forgo the position yourself. Why? I mean, if you really want to... Isn't this kind of one of them things where it's like, don't run around telling everybody how woke you are? That was one point. But now you want people to give up jobs for somebody else who's black. And why do you think... Why would a job be better for a particular person of colour? Unless it was very particularly racially... like say the job was like actually pointed in that direction, like the purpose of it was for that, then like, yeah, I guess that would make more sense. But just like a general job, like, what? I don't really get that. Nah, people should try and strive to have jobs, like, no matter what, and this one just seems a little bit retarded. Don't make us be the de facto diversity guy at work, or at least pay us extra to do the labour of diversifying the workplace. Yeah, if you are given extra tasks to do that shit, then definitely ask for a raise. I'm definitely in favour of that. And don't make us a de facto diversity guy at work. Well, it's a bit of a catch-22, isn't it? Because I bet you any money, if there was a black person at work and you were the only black person at work, and then they made a white guy the diversity guy, then you'd probably have something to say about it, wouldn't you? And you'd be like, well, why is a white guy the head of diversity? Like, it's like you can't fucking win with these people. It's like they're constantly setting you up to fail so they can blame you and condescend you and make you feel like a bad person. I kind of agree, like, obviously it shouldn't be that way. But in a way, it's these people that have created that situation. Like, having all these attitudes towards white people and all this stuff, and what opinions they can and can't have about race and all this stuff. Like, that has created the situation where the black person then has to become the de facto diversity person. Because to not do it would to also mean that then maybe you're racist or something. I don't know. It's really fucking convoluted and stupid. Really, really annoying. Like, and it's so non-introspective. Like, the person who wrote this article, she clearly doesn't have any introspection as to why that might occur. Like, something like that might occur. And it is this culture that they've created of this constant accusation, dichotomy between white and black people. Refuse to speak on an all-white panel, regardless of the topic. Well, then how does it become a diverse panel? Answer me that. Oh, do you have to get 2 black people then? You always have to get 2 black people. If they ask 1 black person, then it'll just have to be an all-white panel. Is that how it is? Seems kind of counterproductive to me. It seems kind of stupid. If there are only a couple of people of colour in your seminar, don't weirdly stare at them when the lecturer poses questions about race and expect them to answer everything. Okay, but if we do answer questions about race, then accept that we may have all different kinds of opinions, whether we're white, black, or whatever, and people might have different things to say about it. And don't expect all white people to say the exact same thing that you want them to say. It goes both ways. If you're in charge of making curricula, make sure there is work by people of colour, especially women of colour, I guess because men of colour don't matter, on the reading list, and not just in the weeks dedicated to race. I'm not especially opposed to that. It kind of depends what it is, and I'm kind of like that with anything that's been put in the curricula. Even outside of this, I would say that there should... I mean, honestly, school curriculums need way more of an overhaul. I mean, and it's a task that is so monumental to do that I'm not sure how and when it's ever going to really be done. But, yeah, like, it just depends what it is. Like, if you're putting in stuff that stokes the flames of racial hatred between people, as if it's some kind of revolutionary woman of colour gives her take on why white men should be killed in the street. Like, that's not good. Like, that's not going to be helpful. But, if it's women of colour and, they may be talking about the experiences of Rosa Parks, or, they're kind of just talking about life in an oppressive system under Jim Crow, and they're just giving their experiences of it, and it's not necessarily there to create hatred, it's just there to kind of show history and show to humanize these things, then absolutely no problem with that. I'm totally for that. I guess it just depends on the intention behind it, I guess, is what I'm critiquing there. Commission people of colour to make work about race. So, black people don't represent race. They're not the arbiters of race. But we have to listen when black people talk about colour, and commission people of colour to make work about race. Not that isn't already happening, though, as well, to be fair. Like, for a very long time now, people of colour have been commissioned to make work about race. They're celebrated. If anything, it's one of the things people come to them for the most. There comes a point where you just go, have you got anything else to talk about? Have you got anything else to make comments about other than race? Because it's getting a little boring. Commission people of colour to make work that has nothing to do with race. Oh, okay. Okay, right, fair enough. Yeah, whatever. I mean, this could have been to one point where it's just commission people of colour to make work. But I guess they had to pad this out somehow, because obviously most of these problems are kind of arbitrary. Don't say things like there are two sides to every story or play devil's advocate when it comes to conversations about race. Actually, no, I think that's quite important, because that helps us understand what is or isn't racist. Just simply asserting that something is racist doesn't make it racist. And understanding all sides to the story is how we determine if something is truly racist or some kind of other incident that can be attributed to everything else. And then it just doesn't become a witch hunt and all the rest. Obviously, there are times where the other side of the story is non-legitimate, and that is how we understand things to be truly racist. But we have to have that discussion in order for that to happen. Otherwise, we're just giving carte blanche to people to run around and say things like, that's racist, and there's just no consequence to it, and people can just be completely bullied using racial... what's the word? Just using... holding people hostage, essentially, by their race. It's... and gaslighting them with reality, gaslighting them. It's kind of a disgusting take, really. Kind of a disgusting take. We should absolutely have that debate. I know it's unsavoury. I know it's difficult, and it can bring the bad out in people sometimes. I know I've definitely seen that, and it is unpleasant, but it is necessary, is my opinion on that. And it is the only way that we get to the truth. So, yeah. In those situations, just listen. Okay. Yeah. It's just not... You have to pad this out. Like, what? You haven't really got 100 points, have you? You're just a dickhead. It's never useful to say stuff, but what about the white working class? Have you thought about non-white working class people's needs? Yes. Usually, when the point that they're trying to make there is that because usually that's a response. When people say stuff like, "Well, black people are impoverished, and that's why they commit crime," in the numbers that they do, then people are obviously going to say, "Well, what about the white working class who are equally as impoverished?" Depending on where it is in America, but there are definitely places in white working class America where it's just as bad, if not worse sometimes, than in terms of poverty when it comes to certain black areas. And yeah, the crime is just not the same. It does happen, obviously, but it's not the same volume. So people do wonder, is there something else going on? And I would say, yeah, there's kind of a cultural thing going on that exacerbates the issue. But I get what they're saying. I want to give some benefit of the doubt here, because it can be disingenuous to do it. Again, it's kind of a case-by-case basis, because there are times when bringing that up can actually be it is a valid argument on some respect. When people are making claims about working class XYZ group, then yeah, the differences between those working class groups can then be called on to point out flaws in arguments, I think. I think that's a valid debate to have. But to be honest with you, any working class people's needs are going to be largely the same, and that is to have a functioning family, decent access to jobs and education, and safety and policing, and all communities should have access to that, black, white, wherever. And yeah, that's what I believe. Don't vote. Oh, don't. What do you mean, don't question mark? Don't vote for racist politicians. Yeah, well, you should probably have a word with the Democrats with that one. Research your candidates. Who has progressive policies that won't needlessly criminalise people of colour? Vote for them. Kind of a bipartisan issue, isn't it, really? Because Republicans have done stuff where they've done drug policy reforms that have caused more people to be arrested for drug stuff, although that has affected white people just as much. The Dems have done the ones that have targeted black people more. I'm thinking of Bill Clinton's crime bill. So it's a bit of both worlds, isn't it? I think what it is you have to think about policies that actually seem to be based off psychology and just realism, like realistic policies that take kind of both sides into account. Obviously, this is why enlightened centrism is the way forward, but you have to have some level of stuff backed up by science. That's why I'm not so opposed to climate change. You have to have policy and things that reflect the actual things that are going on in the world. But this means that everyone has to be kind of real about stuff, and that's not just white people. Everybody has to be real about things in order for this to happen. Because otherwise you just get a mishmash of pandering policies that don't really solve anything, keep things going like they are, and this is why you keep getting things happening like this George Floyd thing, is because people aren't being genuine about the policies that they're putting forward. Whether you perceive them to be quote-unquote progressive or racist or whatever, you have to be really honest about like what is going to be the end goal of this policy. Hashtag believe all women. What if that just became a policy where all female testimony is just believed in court? That could have very real consequences and for abuse. So no, we can't just go around attaching ourselves to things that quote unquote seem progressive or quote unquote seem racist. We have to be real about it. Like sometimes, extra policing in problem areas that happen to be black areas is the right thing to do to try and help this community not be going through so much shit all the time. If you took those police out of there, like, Jesus Christ, what would it be like without the police there? It would be 10 times worse, if not more so. And it's already a problem that people don't cooperate with police. The no snitching thing. So that these people run around, without any kind of, any kind of consequence. It's just kind of insanity to me. It's insanity to me. Nobody calls out this anti-snitch culture in these ghettos and stuff. Nobody calls that out as inappropriate and unhelpful and a damage to black communities. Nobody calls it out at all. If anything, it's reinforced all the time. Snitches get stitches and all that shit. But whenever a cop makes a mistake or a cop abuses their power, now we've got to burn the fucking town down. It's so hypocritical. It's actually anger-inducing. I've got deep anger for this stuff because it's just so fucking hypocritical. You can't protect criminals in your own community and then demand that the police or make out that the police are like the worst people in the world, and every time something happens everything's got to go to shit. It's just sorry, I'm saying things out of frustration that I'm not even sure I fully believe. Police should be held accountable when mistakes are made, and police should be held accountable, so don't get me wrong. What I mean is it's these people that come out of the woodwork when they're in one breath, they're like snitches get stitches, so they'll prop up these psychopaths running around letting fucking kids die and get caught in crossfires with gang shootouts. They will happily let that happen. For what reason, I have no clue, right? But everything has to stop for when these police do something wrong. It's not one or the other, it should be both. When the police are held accountable, they should be held accountable. When criminals commit heinous acts in your community, they should be held accountable as well. That's what I mean. That's the problem. Okay? So please don't take me out of context. That is what I'm angry about. Okay? Remember that black women are not here to save you from yourselves. You got to put the work into. Right back at you. Be cognizant of how your whiteness could be weaponized against black people, i.e. white women. Don't play into stereotypes about black men being inherently threatening to you. It gets black men killed. Yeah. I do kind of agree on this front. The only thing I'll say is that more white people are killed by black people every year in the USA than the other way round. Like, white people don't actually kill black people as much as black people kill white people. So I don't know how much... As much as I think this is actually a problem, so yeah, I actually kind of agree. There is actually a bigger problem if you really want to go down that road. Like, if you're making that a point. And this point should probably be universal, you know? Yeah, people shouldn't be judging each other on their skin colour, essentially, is the message there. And that should go for all people. Use your white privilege to be on the front line between people of colour and the police at protests. You're at much less risk than us. Again, statistically not true. More white people are killed by police every year than black people. It's almost always double. Not always, but it's nearly double, like, all the time, like every year. If you can go back decades. Actually, no, I tell a lie. No. Not decades. Actually, yeah, I tell a lie on that one. Because records didn't start until that Black Lives Matter thing, which actually is one of the only good things that came out of Black Lives Matter is the quantifying and the record of police killings in the USA, which I actually think is a really good thing. And before that, there probably is a case to say that police would abuse that situation. Because they were probably very aware that what they did was not recorded for public consumption. However, since then, those numbers have drastically gone down. Like, if you go to unarmed people killed by police, the numbers of people killed by police have gone down actually quite a lot, if I remember rightly. I'd have to go back and research that one. It's kind of stagnated at roughly about 1,000 people a year for the past few years. I'm more familiar with the past few years, but I do remember looking into it at the time, and I remember that, like, there was quite a lot of people killed. I want to say something like 4,000 people were killed by police in, like, the first couple of years that they were recording it, but I can't actually guarantee that one. I can't see. So I will say, actually, maybe we should just do it now. Let's just find out now. Let's see. Police killings. Let's say 2010. So I think it must have started by then. This is not helpful. Where is it? This is one of the weird things. I'm not going to get this right now. To be honest, I can't be bothered hijacking this stream for this point. But the point being is that I'm pretty sure when they first started recording it, it was something like 2,000, 3,000 people a year. That's come down to about 1,000 people a year now from the past few years. So it has actually made an impact, and so I think that is one of the good things that's come out of Black Lives Matter. Also, it has ended up bringing out this issue, though, that white people are more likely to be killed by police than black people, especially when you factor in the volume of crime. So one of the things that people do to obfuscate this information is they will relate it back to the population size. So they will say, well, there's more white people, so of course more white people get killed. But the thing is that there are slightly more white people, like in the sheer numbers of crime, especially violent crime, because those are the crimes that people care about the most. When it comes to the numbers in violent crime, white people do have the slight edge, not in homicides, but like in murders and stuff. Black people actually slightly take that one. But in violent crime as a whole, white people definitely have an edge on that. Like, they may have, in the sheer raw numbers, they may do like 1,000, 2,000 extra crimes. But the point that I'm making here is that the black people's involvement in violent crime is actually about the same. Like, it's not that far off from them. And so you have to look at the volume of crime versus the population. So then when you look at it that way, you go, well, actually, in the white community, there's just not as much crime in general. Because if you look at that population number, it's something like close to 200 million people. That is... They're committing the same amount of numbers of crimes as black people, who are about 13% of the population. And it's not even 13% of the population, really, is it? You know, it's more like young black men that are doing it, which is an even smaller proportion of that. And obviously, it's not even all of them either. It's just the criminals that are doing this stuff. But it does make you wonder, like, wow, you know, how high must the crime rate be from these people, like these criminal people, to get to the same level as a population like the white population? You know, there's a lot of serious questions to ask there that I don't know, people just don't seem to want to ask those questions. I think they're quite important questions to ask if we ever want to get to the bottom of this problem and actually have black communities flourish in the way that people say they want them to flourish. Be cognizant of your whiteness. We said that one. Record police encounters you see involving black people. I think this is a good one anyway. Just record police encounters that you see involving anyone. The one thing that kind of backfires about this record police encounters you see involving black people is that it has actually reinforced the narrative from the police that they say that, you know, black people resist arrest and they pull guns and they do all these things that cause us to shoot them. White people do it too. In fact, that's why more white people are killed by police, is because they do those things. So, yeah, if anything, it just backs up the police most of the time. Most of the footage I've ever seen of police encounters that involve shootings and stuff like that between the police and whatever, it is usually showing that the black person or the white person has actually resisted arrest, and they essentially resulted in their own death by being an idiot, basically, and endangering people, police officers, and themselves. So, yes, it's a good idea, but if you want the narrative that black people are always innocent, and because that's where I feel like the intention is coming from, this, like, record police encounters you see involving black people, because obviously police can be corrupt and treat black people badly. That hasn't been what has been shown by people doing this. I'm just going to say that now. That isn't actually what has been shown. It's actually been shown the other way around, that police have actually been legitimately saying that black people act a certain way, and that's what results in this. People have started recording it, and then, lo and behold, this is what we've seen. So, yeah. Share alerts when ICE is planning a raid. Sorry. Before I go into that one, I just want to say, I feel like this idea goes back to when police legitimately were, like, in larger numbers, abusing their power. I feel like the police that abuse their power are like the minority in the police now. I feel like they've been weeded out like quite a lot. I think police are like really do try to be on the ball about it if they can. And obviously, yeah, these people slip through the cracks, and that's not good. And yeah, we should prosecute those people where we can, and all the rest. But yeah, I think this is kind of that myth that like it's almost as if that work hasn't been done, you know. That's kind of where this idea comes from. And yeah, you can't, like, it's just not recognizing that those changes have been made. Or at least to a very large extent, maybe not to the full extent, but to a very large extent. Yeah, doesn't necessarily, it's just not necessarily going to come out with the thing that you think it's going to come out with. You know, maybe the police aren't quite as corrupt as you think they are. Share alerts when ICE is planning a raid. I don't know how this actually helps. I mean, it's people of colour, isn't it? So I guess it's anyone. But I'm kind of up in the air with this one, because on the one hand, I do think illegal immigration is wrong. I actually do think illegal immigration is wrong. On the other hand, I do recognise a lot of illegal immigrants are just trying to come in to have a good life and get away from a bad life. So I don't look at illegal immigrants as like bad people or anything like that. I understand they're in a shit position, but I also understand the need for the state or the country to enforce immigration laws, because there is resources to be had. There is a limited amount of resources to go around. People, you know, different states and countries have limited budgets, and most countries are already struggling with their own shit as well, and it's not fair for people to come in and then basically demand that they kind of are involved with it now for some reason, or they get access to it or whatever. So it does put a drain on society, and illegal immigration doesn't help the bottom of society either. And it does help big companies because they essentially get slave labour. So it's a very, very complex problem, is illegal immigration. Again, I don't look at individual illegal immigrants as bad people at all, but I do think the idea of illegal immigration is wrong, and you probably shouldn't do it. But I get it. So this one I'm kind of indifferent to. It's kind of like, yeah, if you're that way inclined, but I'm also not. I'm not against them getting away from an ICE raid. I'm also not against the ICE raid. It's kind of a weird one. I'm kind of in between there. People have put themselves in that arena. That's up to them, and that's kind of the consequences of what they've got to live with. Stand up to Islamophobia wherever you see it. No, because Islamophobia can actually be legitimate. And it, you know, they were talking about feminism earlier, about intersectional feminism, and Islam is perhaps one of the most anti-feminist religions out there. So yeah, I bet you will not see stand up to anti-Christian sentiments in this article, or any article from Vice. You will never see it. But anyone that opposes Islam is Islamophobic, whether they have legitimate criticisms or not. And yeah, stand up to it, because for some reason Islam is above reproach for some reason. Have you ever thought a phrase like Black Lives Matter is too assertive? Consider why you're so uncomfortable with black people standing up for our humanity. I would actually be more for Black Lives Matter if they weren't just about police brutality. If they were about stopping gang violence or just violence in general in black communities, I'd be way more on board. Absolutely. I would be singing the praises to the high heavens of Black Lives Matter. From what I know, Black Lives Matter have done little to nothing in that area. Little to nothing. Most of the time, they've actually kind of gone underground, but when they've come up in the last couple of years, it's mainly just for witch hunts, for either police shootings or shootings that they think the perpetrator was white, and then it ends up turning out the perpetrator was black, and then they suddenly go quiet on the issue, almost like the Black lives don't matter unless they were killed by white people or something. No, I think life should be valued in all elements where possible. And yeah, Black Lives Matter is not too assertive, but it should encompass what it states, and treat it as such, because it does matter. And to point the finger at police brutality as if black people are the only people that face it, and that they need special treatment or a special voice in this fight, is not very fair and not very reflective of reality. And there are arguably bigger problems in the black community than police brutality, and that is the brutality of your neighbour, and anti-snitch culture, and the rejection of education and things like that. So yeah, and the breakdown of family and stuff like that. But yeah, there's much bigger problems that needed to be worked on than, arguably, I'm just saying arguably, because I still think police brutality is a problem anyway. But I'm just saying, like, some of these things, like I don't know, is there going to be an article of 100 to black people, here's 100 ways you can make other black people's lives better? I don't think so. We're not going to see that, unfortunately. Listen, when black people say, I'm not comfortable in this situation, you've seen Get Out, haven't you? I haven't actually seen Get Out. I do actually want to watch it, though. But yeah, if they're not comfortable, then yeah, they're not comfortable. Whatever. If they're actively being like, I'm not comfortable to be a dick, then they're being a dick. If you haven't seen Get Out, watch Get Out. Understand that everyday horror is real. Okay. Question whether you have double standards when it comes to drugs. Do you think it's cool when white weed entrepreneurs make tons of money but think black people who found to have traces of marijuana in their system deserve to be thrown in prison? No, yeah, I actually definitely agree on this one. I think black marijuana entrepreneurs should make loads of money as well. Absolutely. Definitely in that camp, and I think it's an absolute travesty that anyone's thrown in prison to do with anything to do with weed. Yeah, I really do. I think it's really stupid. I think most of the time, though, when black people are thrown in prison with marijuana charges, it's not just marijuana charges. It's other charges as well. It just ups the numbers of black people being found with marijuana charges. So it kind of alters the statistics. So then, because then it makes it look like, oh, loads of black people are getting thrown in prison for marijuana charges or traces of marijuana, when that is just another like, if you went to that specific case of that person, you would probably see, I'm not saying always, because maybe there are unjust times that this happens, but you will probably see that it's a thing that's been tacked on to other charges that they've been charged with, like maybe aggravated assault or theft or whatever, and then they also happen to have a bit of weed on them. So because the police are feeling angry because this person's probably been acting the fool and maybe trying to resist arrest a little bit, chatting shit and not being respectful, so then they'll go, you know what, we found this bit of weed, you know what, now you've got a weed thing as well. And I'm not trying to say that's right or wrong, because again, I actually don't believe in those charges. I think marijuana charges are bullshit. But that is the system we realistically live in, and if you want to avoid that, then yeah, maybe don't be mouthing off to the police, and also just don't be committing crimes where you can be caught with weed. That's pretty much it. Don't have dreadlocks if you're not black. Just don't. You know what? I'm not even going to entertain reading the rest of that one. You can go fuck yourself. Don't tell people how to live. Don't tell people how to dress. I don't tell you how to dress. I don't say that you need to look like a white person if you want to go to work. I don't say don't have your hair and dreadlocks because you live in America or some shit like that. I don't play that game with people because I think people are entitled to live how they want to live, to an extent, as long as they're not hurting other people. Yeah, don't fuck around. This entitled kind of take, don't we have dreadlocks, is indicative. To me, if somebody says something like that, I would consider them to maybe be a narcissist. Because you have to be very, very controlling and very hateful and very have a very big superiority complex to even feel like you have the entitlement to tell people what they can and can't do with their hair. Yeah. Don't refer to things as your spirit animal if you're not native. Again, same thing. Number one, it's kind of a bit of a... it's a bit like me saying to somebody, don't say, oh my God, if you're not Christian. It's kind of stupid. No, it's just a turn of phrase. And people say it, and whatever. What the fuck are you going to do? What the fuck are you actually going to do? You're going to do fuck all. Only native peoples can talk about spirit animals. Fuck off, man. You're such a dickhead. Do not compare the exploitation of animals to racism ever. I'm deadly serious. I guess that's a shout out to vegans. But yeah, I don't actually agree as well. Yeah, I wouldn't compare the two either. Seems like a little bit of a retarded comparison. I do not put humans on the same level as animals. Still love animals. Don't think any cruelty should happen to animals. Still eat meat. I understand. I try not to buy into... I try to research it so that I'm not buying into as, hopefully, cruel practices. Although I guess you can never truly know. But, and I try not to eat loads of meat either, but I still think it's important to the diet. I think it's part of the circle of life. But yeah, anyone that's being purposefully cruel to animals should not be... Yeah, they should be definitely looked at in a weird way. But I definitely don't put them on the same level as humans. I just don't. I definitely care more about the idea of racism than I do about the... exploitation of animals, unfortunately. I don't know, that's just the way my brain's wired. I can't help it. I can't believe I even need to say this in 2018, but here we go. Don't wear blackface. Yeah, I can kind of agree to that. In very special circumstances where maybe a joke is being made, or maybe for a movie, where there's a point to it, or whatever, like, if someone's making a point with it, then I'm not really against it. Like, I give enough artistic license to say that people can do these things. But generally speaking, I think it is kind of offensive. Sometimes it can be kind of funny, again, depending on how funny people make it. Same with whiteface, or, you know, like white girls and all that stuff, you know. I think it's... I don't know... It's a weird one because obviously some of this stuff is subjective. I think what it is I try to keep in mind the intention, and if people are intentionally using blackface to be malicious and to be a cunt to other black people, then that is where I draw the line, and it's hard to know where to make that distinction, but. Because if you say that you can just do blackface, then yeah, it is hard to make that distinction. So, I don't know. I honestly don't know with that one. But I'm kind of okay with black or white face or any kind of face. I'm kind of fine with different races kind of roasting each other as long as it's funny. So I don't know. I don't know where I fall on that one. It's a bit of a weird one. Okay, well, let's move on. Don't even think about saying the N-word, even if you're alone, even if you're listening to rap, even if you're alone and listening to rap. No, definitely don't agree with this one. If you wrote it, then people are going to sing it. Don't fucking act the fool and think that you can control how people interpret or like their intention behind things. I find that again, this is a very narcissistic thing. Like, you can control how people talk, or can infer what their intention is, or whatever, just because they say the N-word. Saying the N-word doesn't make you racist. I'll happily say that right now, and I'll defend that point to the day that I die. It does not make you racist inherently. It just really doesn't. If you say it to be racist, and your intention is to be racist to somebody, then yeah, that is racist. And I think, honestly, I think that's kind of obvious, usually. Because if somebody's just singing along to a rap song, that's not them trying to be racist to anybody. That's them trying to just sing along to a song. And if you can't handle that, if you actually can't handle people doing that, then you really need to grow the fuck up. Similarly, don't use the word gypsy or paki or redskin or any other racial slur, even if you're repeating what someone else said or reading from a text. That's just absolute nonsense. Again, it just basically, what you're saying is you can't have adult conversations where people are talking about taboo subjects, because you can't even handle the word. You can't handle the word gypsy. How are you supposed to handle the topic at large? Like, you are not the person that is ever going to solve any problem ever. You are the person that runs away from issues. That is what is going on here. That includes the word coloured. Person of colour and coloured are not the same, trust me. Mate, even black people use the word coloured. Like, who cares anymore? And person of colour is basically the same. It is basically the same, because it has the same idea that, like, people of colour have colour and white people don't have colour. Whereas the idea behind coloured is that these people have colour that white people don't have. It's a different colour. Like, it's literally the same idea. And you're trying to say it's not, you're gaslighting me again, even though it's literally the same when you break down the definition behind it. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, you stupid cunt? Understand that America has what it has because it stole land from indigenous people and stole people from Africa. Definitely boiling it down to the most low-res opinion. I'm not saying it's completely untrue, because it is true to a large extent. But there's crimes on all sides here, not just from the European people that came over, but the Native Americans had black slaves. They dealt in the slave trade. They also dealt in warring against each other. They were constantly at war with each other, and they made various different deals with American states at the time that were betrayed, not only by Native Americans, but also by the new Americans, I guess you could call them, or the Europeans. Both sides, it was war. There was all people on all sides were doing, shady shit. It turned out that the Europeans came out on top. I don't know if anyone can really say if that's right or wrong. It's just is what it is, which I know it seems like a cop-out, but it just kind of is like that. It's a little bit like, I don't approve of the racism going on in South Africa and what's going on there with white farmers and all that kind of stuff. I don't think that's right. However, the fact that white people aren't in power in South Africa anymore and apartheid has ended is just, it is what it is. Like, I'm not happy, I'm not sad, it's not right or wrong necessarily. It's just is what history is. Like, these things move along. Like, things change. Like, people weren't necessarily stolen from Africa, they were sold to the Europeans, not stolen. There was already a thriving slave trade in Africa before then. It probably would have been quite difficult to just suddenly start stealing people from Africa, to be honest. They would have had to start many different wars with people in Africa, when it was probably easier just to start trade with them and trade in slaves that they already had. It just makes way more sense that that's what they did. I wouldn't say it never happened, because it probably did happen, but I would say largely that's not how it happened, though. Also, take it up with the Mexicans because they did it worse. Anyway, care about race on the 364 days that aren't Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Yeah, we'll do. I definitely do that. Also, fucking hell! Also, don't whitewash his legacy and use it to argue that black people should just take what they're given lying down. No, but also black people shouldn't use what he said to burn and loot and destroy their own communities, because that's not what he meant either. He was... Okay, I know what they're talking about here. It's that quote where Martin Luther King says something about... Well, there's two quotes. Obviously, he says, like, judge people by their content and not of their character, not their skin colour. And then there's also this other quote, which I'm going to paraphrase because I can't remember it word for word, but there's the quote that is something to do with protest is the voice of the unheard or something like that, right? But what he's actually saying is, in that the full context of what he's saying is that these protests happen in 1968, 67, 65 and stuff in Detroit and Chicago and Watts. You know, he says about these riots, he says, these happen because of the injustice that's going on. They're not right. He actually says that they're not right. He says that it's not right that these black people are destroying their communities, but it's happening for a reason. And I actually agree with him. I'm kind of in that camp. And this is why I think I get misunderstood a lot when we talk about like these recent events, like the George Floyd thing, because it's not that I'm not outraged by the incident with George Floyd, and I do think that the cops involved should be prosecuted. They should face consequences. But what I don't like is that innocent people then get dragged into it for no reason, have their lives ruined, because people are angry. I don't think that's right. Like, imagine if after the Manchester bombings in the UK, instead of everybody coming together and saying that, we shouldn't judge all of Islam, okay, which is what happened. Everybody tried to come together and say, we're not going to let this get us down. Right? I'm not saying it's literally comparable, obviously, but here's an incidence of injustice, right? A Muslim guy bombs an Ariana Grande show, killing innocent people, and people are obviously angry and upset by that would happen, okay? Imagine if people at that injustice from that murder then turned around and went, well, we're going to take this injustice to Muslim people and smash up their communities until we get justice, and whatever mosque he came from, that should get shut down, and whatever. Like, if they took that tact every single time there was a terrorist incident or something like that, if that was an actually accepted point of view, things would be really bad for Muslims in this country. Luckily, it's not an accepted view. And what I'm trying to get at is, I'm happy it's not an accepted view, and this is the view that I'm trying to fight when it comes to this stuff. Like, people are making excuses as if, this George Floyd, these riots are happening in Minneapolis and they're spreading to other cities now, that it's somehow legitimate and okay, but it's not okay. And that is all I'm trying to say. I could understand it a little bit more if they just went to the police station and they just burnt down the police station and they just took the fight to the police and they took the fight to the mayor's office and they took the fight to whatever government agency they feel is appropriate and stuff like that, right? I could absolutely get behind that and have way more understanding with it. What I don't like is when honest black entrepreneurs, or any entrepreneurs that's trying to bring jobs to disenfranchised communities, when those businesses get fucked up, and maybe they're small businesses and they will not be able to come back from it, or maybe they're big businesses, but maybe they just go, maybe we're not going to reopen this store now. You know, like you're gambling with that. You're kind of just expecting that all this stuff is going to go back to normal. That's not right, and you're harming a lot of people's livelihoods. You're harming people's ability to feed their families. You're ruining people's lives. You're making the property value in the area go down. You're making the quality of life for people in that area worse. It's just, what are you doing? Just what are you doing? It's honestly just insanity. Honestly. Think about how race is operating even when people of colour aren't around. Be cognizant of it wherever you are. Whichever situation you're in, people of colour have to, so should you. Didn't she also say that she doesn't want to think about it 24/7? And then also, don't message me about it. Don't talk to me about it. I don't want to ever know if you're being cognizant of races. Don't pretend to be woke. But think about how race is operating even when people of colour aren't around. Be cognizant of it wherever you are. Whichever situation you're in, people of colour have to, so should you. Like, which is it? What is it? Like, fuck me. Like, it's literally like being in an abusive relationship. I want you to care about me, but not too much. Like, what? Fuck off. Like, you're actually a cunt. Remember that your queerness, womanhood, transness, class, background, disability doesn't exclude you from white privilege. Remember that your blackness doesn't mean that you're oppressed. Doesn't exclude you from not being oppressed. Just because you're black doesn't mean you're oppressed. There are black people who are oppressed, but that doesn't mean all black people are oppressed. How about that? So, if none of that can exclude you from white privilege, then that means that you don't get to pretend that you are always oppressed just because you are black. It goes both ways. Make your feminism useful to all women rather than calling yourself an intersectional feminist. Show, don't tell. Yeah, I agree with that one. Yeah, definitely call out the hypocrisy of the feminists, because there are many hypocrisies. Don't assume, full stop, that you can understand what it's like to experience racism. You can't. That's the whole point. The whole point is to create a situation that you can never understand so that we can constantly gaslight you about it. At the end of the day, people have empathy, and people can put each other in different people's shoes. If you want us to not understand what it's like to experience racism, then what's the point in making any effort to understand it? We might as well just do what the white fucking what are they called? The white nationalists say, and just have segregated lives. Because what's the point? What is really the point if we can't actually connect and understand each other? I think other people can understand what it's like to experience racism. Maybe not literally directly in the sense of like, oh, I'm a white guy, I've experienced racism, but more along the lines of, well, I've had people bully me, or I've had people be horrible to me or treat me badly for things I can't control. And that did make me feel horrible and bad about myself, and that wasn't good. And I assume that racism can feel very similar to that. And so, yes, I can empathise or sympathise with it on some level, and allow me to do that as one human to another. How about that? How about that's the point? I love how all of this is not bridging gaps between white people and black people. It's trying to control how they act. That's all it is. Everything is about controlling how they act and think, not actually what can actually bring people together and help people see each other as humans. They simply assert that you should see people as humans while completely dehumanising white people in the process. Understand that nothing in your life has been untouched by your whiteness. Everything you have would have been harder to come by if you had not been born white. Kinda true, kinda not true, kind of a case-by-case basis kind of a thing. Not everything in the world is harder for you just because you're black, though, as well. I think that's kind of like a misconception. Not everything in your life has been harder just because you're black, like, either. And if anything, a lot of the things that make your life better
are because of the efforts of white people. So, bit of a weird cocktail of shit you've got going on there, but realistically, it's not really whiteness, it's being productive. The reason why white people have what they have is somewhat related to the racism and the segregation that has gone on in the past. I think it's also related to just efforts by those groups to have businesses, have functioning families, have communities that are not, ruined by crime, people trying to take pride in their communities and build them up and not have them ruined by drug use and abuse and things like that. So I think a lot of people, white people, it's not like they just inherently have all this stuff and it just exists in this vacuum and they just pleasantly have all this stuff. They have worked for it. There's a culture that they've cultivated over a long period of time that they actively try to keep happening. And one of the things that happens in the black community is that anyone who tries to do that, anyone who tries to mow their lawn and have a steady job, do well in school or whatever, they can be considered white, right? And they get bullied for that in black schools and stuff like that. That needs to change. That needs to change because it's not acting white. That's just good. That's just good work ethic. That's just being a good person, right? It's not got anything to do with whiteness or blackness because, in that case, you could say that hillbillies are basically black because the way they act is not white. It's fucking stupid. This whole fucking idea is so reductive and stupid and dehumanizing and so spits in the face of everybody. It's just so fucking shitty. Oh my god. I'm sorry, it just pisses me off. Be grateful for the lesson. When you're called out on racism, getting defensive won't help. It just depends. If somebody is actually being racist, then yeah, you kind of do. But I'm not going to back down if I feel like I'm right. Because I don't think anything I've said here is racist. But I'm sure there are people out there who want to construe what I'm saying as racist just because I'm critiquing some of the points made in this article, and I'm critiquing some elements of black culture in America. Some people won't like that and try and say that I'm a racist. I don't believe I am being racist, and you're going to have to really explain to me how I am being racist. And if it's going to be strawman and weak-ass bullshit, like just because I'm white I can't have an opinion, then you can just go fuck yourself, really, because you're not helping anyone. You're not a progressive. In fact, you're probably a racist when you enter the conversation in that way. So yeah, fuck off. Move past your white guilt. Guilt is an unproductive emotion. Don't sit there mired and woe. Just be better. That one I definitely agree with. I think white guilt is a really fucking stupid idea. Yeah, absolutely. Recognize that fighting racism isn't about you. It's not about your feelings. It's about liberating people of colour from a world that tries to crush us at every turn. Now, I actually agree with that, but this also includes very, very real conversations that black people have to have about their own communities and the direction they want to go in. And these were the conversations that were being had by the civil rights leaders back in the 1960s that people pretend that they are having today. They don't actually. They're emulating it. They're pretending to be Malcolm X. They're pretending to be Martin Luther King. They're pretending to be Rosa Parks. They're pretending to be James Baldwin. They're pretending to be all these people that they've seen from the past who can stand up and say articulate things and speak out against real, actual injustice. But they actually have real plans and they actually have real visions for the black community that actually have goals and solutions and ways to move forward with the community. A lot of the leaders today, they don't actually have any solutions. This is how you know that they're not actually your friend, right? This is how you know that they actually don't care about the racism that they talk about, is because they don't actually come at you with any kind of solution or any critique of, or any real conversation that could turn things around for the black community and actually put them in a better position. Candace Owens is a person that, hate her or love her, because she can be a bit of a dickhead sometimes. Like, I actually do think she's a bit of a dickhead sometimes. Other times, I actually think she's spot on, and she does call out this kind of thing, and I think she is someone worth listening to. Not all the time, because I think some of her takes can be kind of shitty or reductive, but she does have some good things to say. And she's one of the few black voices out there that is actively trying to encourage black people to take life for themselves, start businesses, you know, look after their community and be there for each other and call out crime and criminals. Things that are legitimately things that these discussions legitimately need to happen in black societies in America in order for things to turn around. It's not just racism all the time. Not everything is racism. Not everything is police brutality. These problems exist, but I feel like they're amplified to sometimes take away from some of the bigger discussions that need to happen in order to keep them happening, so that black people are constantly stuck in this perpetual cycle of poverty and crime and excuses and people pitying them and whatever. Like, if you really want these things to change, there has to be really, really serious discussions about very taboo subjects, and they have to happen with people who are going to be honest with you about it, not people who are just going to kiss your ass and lick your fucking arsehole, trying to please you with everything that you say, or try and divert you into problems that have been blown up by the media to suit their agenda. It's those are the things that have to happen, you know. And if you really do care about race and racism, you have to be willing to have that discussion, because if you're not actually dedicated. And remember, being an ally is a verb, not a noun. You can't just magically be an ally to people of colour because you say you're one. It's something that you must continually work on. Yeah, to be honest with you though, I'm not sure if I would want to be an ally to anybody like you, because it just seems like you want a drone to basically act and speak and think and dress and whatever, vote and whatever. Like, you basically want a white person to kind of be your social sycophant slave without actually without actively doing it. You know what I mean? Like, without them showing that. Such a weird thing. It's just a very, I don't know, it's kind of gaslighting. This whole thing is gaslighting. And it's kind of disgusting. And honestly, it just annoys the hell out of me. So, I don't know. I hope that you've enjoyed the video, the stream, and yeah, I'm going to sign off. Thanks a lot for tuning in, guys.